So this playoff thing is out there. Or this the CBA is potentially getting done within the next 48 hours. And the biggest change, I think, for the casual fan is going to be the idea of playoff teams going from 12 to 14 and only one team making the bye in each conference. And you brought up a really good point. This all sounds well and good. However, Kansas City was the 2 seed last year and got the bye in the last week of the season when they took care of the Chargers, and then inexplicably the Dolphins and that bearded lunatic Ryan Fitzpatrick took down New England at New England in Week 17, giving the Chiefs the bye. Do we think the Chiefs still would have gotten to the Super Bowl had they not had the bye?
You know what? That's hard to say, but it would have been made a lot harder, and it would have opened them up to risk, right?
Right.
Like the NCAA is a lot different than the NFL, because the depth of talent in the NFL, because of the amount of teams, because of the quality of the players, it's a lot more than in the NCAA. So there's a chance that Steelers team could have found a way to beat Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs on one day. Now, it's highly unlikely, but it could have happened. And then what are we looking at here?
Yeah.
A playoffs without Patrick Mahomes because you wanted to
I am not here for that.
But I guess that's what I mean in all seriousness, from a product standpoint. And I enjoyed that Steelers team last year for what it represented, right? What Mike Tomlin put together. But let's just use them as a proxy. Let's take the Steelers off it and say an 8-8 football team playing their backup quarterback was one that potentially upset a team with one of the faces of the league on it. Yeah. Just those general types. You want to open yourself up to that kind of NCAA tournament risk. I get it for the cash grab of all of it. I understand that. But from a competitive standpoint, the same reason I generally tend to be against a lot of upsets as we get into the second round of the NCAA tournament are the reason that on principle, I don't really like this move. You can call it watering down the playoff field. To me, it's opening up these good teams that we want to see play deep into the postseason to unnecessary risk.
I agree. I think that's the risk if you're a fan, that you arguably throw more chance into one of the top 4 teams making it. Because outside of the Cowboys when they were the number 1 seed in 2016, since 2013, every Super Bowl has basically been a 1 or 2 seed. It's been that way. I mean, the last time there was a not 1 or 2 seed, out there was the 2012 season when the Ravens won the whole damn thing, playing on Wild Card Weekend. Other than that, it's been teams with the bye the entire time.
Yes, and so a lot of that, like I look at that and say, all right, what about the new collective bargaining agreement that went into place the year before? Maybe had an effect on that. Teams have less time to practice and prepare in the offseason and training camp, so maybe you're a little more reliant on the strength of your roster's quality than you are your ability to develop people because you just don't have as much time. But regardless, that's been what it is.
Right.
And so those advantages you're now stripping from a team in the 2 seed. So yeah, I get it. More teams are in it for longer. Is that really always a good thing by the end of the season? We went back and looked at the numbers in all of this. Of the teams, if you go back to 2002 and say, if we had expanded this field, who would have made the postseason in that time? There would have been 36 teams that would have been added over that time. You would have had 9 teams with double-digit wins that would have been added. So 8 10-win teams, and then the 11-win Patriot teams when Matt Castle was the quarterback in 2008. You would have had 18 9-win teams at that time, and then you would have had 9 8-win teams that would have also been a part of that. So that's what you're opening this up to, again, in my mind, in something that potentially knocks. And I don't know, maybe I'm just very, like, in general, not a big underdog guy. Like, I want to see the really good teams. We play all these games in the regular season to figure out who's good and who's not, and then you want to reward someone who sneaks in.
Yeah, like, so let's sort of go down the list here of what's at stake in this new CBA that potentially could be decided in the next 48 hours, one way or the other. I think we can all agree that less preseason games is a win, right? We understand that part of it. I think
nobody involved likes the preseason.
And I think we're also to the point where we understand, because of the way preseason has changed over the last 5 to 10 years, that really the first 2 weeks of the season are essentially warm-up games.
You could even argue the first quarter of the season,
right.
You see a lot of these teams figuring it the hell out.
Right. So, and while sometimes that's difficult because it could cost you, because when you're trying to figure that out, there's an assignment blown, and there may be someone that you really need on your team that suddenly gets injured because of that. But I think the idea of taking out the risk of something like that happening in a preseason game, I think we can all agree that's probably okay, right? Because
yes.
I think we're going to see more and more teams, by the way, essentially have these joint practices together and use that more as the basis of getting your team ready.
The NFL's players, coaches, all these people made this decision for the league, right?
Correct.
The way they decided to go about doing this basically forced their hand to say, you can have these preseason games. We're not playing anybody.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to have to force us to put bodies on the field for those games because we think we can get that value in other ways.
Right.
They made that decision for them.
So that's a win. The 17-game regular season, if you're a fan, you want that, right? You really do. If you're a fan, you want to see that. So to me, the only issue and the biggest issue going forward, should this thing be agreed on as it's being presented right now, as we understand. Again, the NFL owners are meeting on this, trying to get a consensus on that. They need 3/4 of the vote. The NFLPA is going to have a conference call later on this week and update their reps, and the reps will take that to the teams, and they'll disseminate that information. Then the idea becomes, are we okay, as you alluded to, putting more chance into the postseason? And that's interesting, right? Because we all love the postseason. It's the fun. They're basically giving us the thing we want more of.
Well,
right?
Phil Yates pointed this out. We're still going to watch. Like,
yes,
of course
we are.
We're moss to the flame on this one. That's going to happen. Mr. Christopher tweets in and said, the beauty of the playoffs in the NFL is that any given Sunday, anything can happen. I like an expanded playoffs also with the CBA. The players know what they're getting themselves into. Thank you for that last sentence of true enlightenment there. But with the expanded playoffs, that any given Sunday thing, I think the point we're making is, since 2012, not really.
Yeah.
Like, it's the good teams.
Correct.
Which is, again, in my mind, one of the beauties of the things that's great about the NFL is you end up crowning a true champion.
Right.
The teams that are good all along, you're not beholden to the randomness of a hot goaltender or a hot pitcher. It's you have to show all year that you are good and consistent for this to work.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content plus live streaming, make sure to subscribe to ESPN Player.